I'm sure you've heard of the Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
Yeah, Johnny Depp.
The legend that comes from England. And some people say it might have originated in France, depending on the information you look up. But what if I told you that wasn't the only legend that was serving up flesh and making people cannibals without their knowing? What if I told you that outside of Chicago, in the area of Palos Park, they have their very own demon butcher? The road running right in front of you is 123rd Street here in Palos Park. Now the building that you're looking at, this is the Plush Horse Ice Cream Parlor. Now this is the back of the building or the side, depending on how you want to look at it. It's a pretty popular ice cream parlor from what I understand. Anyway, what this has to do with our story. In 1892, whenever, everybody was coming, basically around the Chicago World's Fair time.
Right.
You had all these people coming in and migrating, and a lot of them were staying in the area to start creating businesses. Now, a man by the name of Herman Butcher, and people got their names from their trades back then. So that's where I guess butcher came from, because he was a butcher.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
So he came here to this area and decided to set up a butcher shop. And there were a couple of other ones at the time, but he had high connections.
I guess it's a good thing he wasn't a manure collector.
Guess so.
You got your last name from your trade.
So he had high connections, and you had the time frame of, a depression that came through. So a lot of businesses were hit hard.
Right.
But because of his connections, he kind of stayed afloat. And basically that's what got him to be the last remaining butcher in the area. Now, it's stated that people think that where this ice cream parlor sits today is where the butcher shop once sat back in the day. He had an apprentice that worked under him, and it was known that he kind of treated the apprentice bad. Like, the family knew it. Like, they said he worked him too hard. He was mean to him. Well, one day a large shipment of meat came in, and he made the apprentice try to carry all of it at one time downstairs to the meat locker. So, needless to say, the apprentice attempted it, tripped, fell, and broke his neck.
He did not accomplish his goal.
He didn't. So the butcher found him and was like, I don't need this. These people already think I treat this dude bad. My business is already struggling, because he was running out of meat. Even though he got that big supply, but still, this is a bad time to be catching heat like that.
Freaking Billy. God, always gotta ruin everything.
So,
Bobby.
He hid the body behind the boxes, and then closed him up in the meat locker. And as the days went by, he started catching more and more heat. Like, people asking, where's he at? Like, his family being like, where's he at? Where's he at? And he was like, I don't know, but you tell that fool he needs to come on back to work. And he was trying to make it out like he had basically went and got a job somewhere else, that paid more money. All right, we're coming up on the front of the ice cream parlor right there. You can see the sign ahead. So basically, with all the heat, he knew he needed to get rid of the body. So he went down into the freezer area. He hung the apprentice up on the hook, and he sliced a part of his leg off, and he wrapped it up in the meat packaging, took it home, and cooked it that night for himself to try.
Good party, thanks to Billy.
Now, surprisingly, the butcher found the meat very good. So he was like, hey, I need to get rid of him, cut the rest of him up, and we're putting him for sale. And that's exactly what he did. So he sold all the meat from the apprentice, and basically the next day he was waiting for all the town people to come and be like, you know, what'd you give us? But to surprise, all the town people were like, that was the most delicious meat. I want more.
Billy must have been on a good diet. A lot of fruits, pineapples, give him that sweet flavor.
So he's ran out of the meat that was supplied by the apprentice. So he's kind of in a bind. He needs to find some more. So what he does is he goes to like the area by the railroad tracks to where there's like a hobo camp. And he tells them, hey, I'll give you a little bit of food and stuff if you come do a little bit of work for me. So he lures one at a time to the butcher shop. He feeds them a drugged meal and some potent schnapps and knocks them out. And then at that point, that's when he butchers them up, gets them all cut up to sell for the next day. Keeps doing that until basically word starts spreading around the camp that something's up. Our homies are going missing here, okay? They leaving with this dude and they're not coming back. So basically everybody in the camp packs up and they all leave. So once again, he's in trouble. He needs meat. So he goes to the next step. This is the other side of the Plush Horse ice cream shop. There was quite a bit of people in there enjoying some ice cream, and they were all eyeballing us with this camera as we were walking by, so we kind of came across over here to not be in their face with it.
Spy for the camera!
Back to the story, though. So he needs to find his next source of meat. And he's an older gentleman, can't really put up a lot of fight against people. So, his next victims are children. So, one by one, these kids in the area start going missing. And really, what makes this part of the story so gross is that the people that were coming in to buy the meat were like, this is the best of all. So he was like, yeah, I got to keep this going because I can't run out because these people will be calling up my suppliers and trying to get meat from my suppliers, and I can't have that. I can't have them questioning where I'm getting this delicious delicacy from. Well, eventually so many people started going missing that they started questioning where he was getting his meat from. Like, how was his business booming, yet we got all these people missing? It just wasn't adding up. For our next spot, we are at Oak Hill Cemetery. Now, all the kids have gone missing, and all the homeless people have gone missing. So the villagers start to suspect something, right? Well, they think it's one of their own. Well, with the tips of the missing apprentice family and other just ideas, they come to the conclusion that maybe it's Herman Butcher. So they storm the butcher shop and they find the remains in the meat locker downstairs of a 7-year-old child still hanging on the meat hook. So what do you think the villagers did? The mob, the people after the killer, they storm the butcher's house, drag him out of the house, and take their revenge. And to deliver the final blow, they decapitate the butcher.
Yeah, cut his head off. You can do it! Cut his head off!
The reason that we're here in Oak Hill Cemetery is because they say that the body was buried here in the cemetery. Now, there have been legends that the body has moved. Originally, it stated that the body was placed in the center of the cemetery, which is probably about where I'm standing. It doesn't look like that big of a cemetery. So I would imagine this would have been about the center area. The second location, once they said that the grave moved, was it came to be at a plot near the water. So that's where we're looking right now. Now there's not really too many stones down here. There's some behind us. But in essence, if that were true, if he moved from the center to close down here by the water, he's moving away from his head, which doesn't make sense as far as the legend goes. The third spot that his current grave now sits is alongside this fence line and road. Now you'll notice that the stone just says Butcher, and around it you really don't see any stones that say Herman, but this is supposedly where his body rests. Now as far as his head, remember I told you they decapitated him. That whole thing was supposed to have been done at an area called Indian Hill, which is supposed to be located directly across from the cemetery, over there across the road. Now, as the legend goes, when they decapitated him, they buried his head over there. And that the reason for the movement of his body is that the two are trying to come back together.
Dun, dun, dun.
As far as why they're coming back together, it doesn't really state why. Maybe it's kind of like a, what is it, like the Hessian in Sleepy Hollow or something. You know, he needs his head back. Maybe somebody's kidnapped his head and his body is doing evil deeds around here like in Sleepy Hollow. Who knows? Or maybe once the body and the head reconnect, maybe the demon butcher will once again start his slaying. This is the area right across the road from Oak Hill Cemetery that is supposed to be Indian Hill. Currently, this is an area called the Children's Farm at the center. And when I was reading, it sounds like it's a school. Now, there's a sign over to our left that says something about bus drop off and pick up. I don't know, it kind of looks like a farm, like the sign says, Children's Farm. So I don't really know what kind of school it is. Nonetheless, I think they're getting out for the day. I see a bunch of cars kind of loading up over here behind us. So we'll just show you the area over here. To just kind of give you some perspective, just over there is Oak Hill Cemetery. Now, in some of the stories I read, it was stated that they think this might have been the location of Herman Butcher's house, because like I said, the mob stormed his house. So in essence, if they're storming his house and dragging him out of the house, they would take their revenge initially probably in the front yard, which means they're whacking away, decapitation. This is where his head would have been buried, in this area, and then body would have been taken over there. Like I said, this is just a legend. There's nothing factual that states that this story ever took place. But it was a pretty cool little story.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, what do you believe? Do you believe Chicago has its very own demon butcher?
I could see it. It would go well here with, like, you know, all the other legends and lore surrounding Chicago, from the mafia to ghosts to, you know, everything. So I could see it fitting in real well.
Yeah. And do you believe Herman Butcher's head and body are trying to make its way back together? Possibly to wreak havoc.
So we want to give a special shout out and a thank you to our VIP Road Warrior Patreon member, the Crip Lady. Thank you for your donation. It helps keep us going each month. If you would like to donate, check out our Patreon. And until then, catch you guys down the road at the next exit.
Keep it spooky.
Later.